hear where folks are. Today, Randy will be going over Strong Ground, Brené Brown's kind of newest book. Especially excited today because I think she was one of the first leadership research authors that I came across. And her perspective on vulnerability has definitely shaped how I showed up in really critical moments where I just stand up for people into power. Um, so, yeah, hey Megan, I'm Graham Ferry. Uh, Randy, any good morning. Any
Good
any
morning.
any initial thoughts to folks?
Um, so are you passing the baton to me now?
Sure, yeah, if you
Okay,
like.
good.
Yeah.
First of all, welcome to everybody to the November webinar. Howson, thank you. Mike Mowry is frequently with us, but he is traveling somewhere, I think to Kansas City, but I'm not sure. I want to say welcome to everybody. I'm looking at the list of attendees, and Megan Mahan has apparently cloned herself 3 times. So we've got 4 Megan Mahans and then a number of others. Welcome to every one of you. And I see Grand Prairie, Texas, and be sure to put where you're from into the chat. Brené Brown, I'm going to take my headphones off. And Housen, will you wave if you can hear me okay? Okay, good. I always like to do that. So, Brené Brown is a big deal. She's not a sort of big deal. She is a whopping big deal. She has one of the most viewed talks ever on TED Talk, and she has written a number of books. I have presented briefings or synopses of 3 of her books. One of them is Dare to Lead, and it is subtitled Brave Work, Tough Conversations, and Whole Hearts. And so I presented this for SGR. You'll notice that this handout is now been updated to look like this. So we've had a change in how our handouts look. But Dare to Lead is very much a good book. And then in between the two, she wrote a book called Atlas of the Heart that has a massive number of paragraphs and chapters on different emotional elements of leadership. So she is a big deal. But if you'll look in the chat at the moment, I've put a gift article from the New York Times, an interview with Brené Brown. It is terrific. And I'm going to read just a little bit from the interview of Brené Brown, which came out shortly after she did the book Strong Ground. And so you might want to save that link and read this interview. And I think you can actually listen to it. I do everything by reading more than listening. Here are some excerpts from that interview. When you ask leaders who are doing really important work, corporate, nonprofit, military, sports, what's getting in the way, the answer across every single industry is courage. We won't have hard conversations. We don't hold people accountable. We shame and blame them. I was like, oh, I can do this. I know how to do this. In the end, at work, we're just people. When she started out, she was kind of the self-help guru. Now she is far more focused on her findings. She's a careful researcher, has a PhD, on her findings in what makes leadership work in companies. So the interviewer then said, you quote Amy Webb, a CEO and professor at New York University who studies the future, and she described this moment as a super cycle of unprecedented change. I think that's right. A super cycle of unprecedented change. And so Brené Brown said, what it looks like is scarcity. We're not doing enough. We don't know enough. We don't have enough people trained. We're not investing enough. This is what everyone's doing, and we're behind. So it looks like fear and scarcity driving huge investments in AI that are not even aligned with business strategy. One of the things she believes in deeply is aligning things with business strategy. And sometimes people jump on a bandwagon. At the moment, the biggest bandwagon, and it will last, is artificial intelligence, but they don't know what they're doing with artificial intelligence. They don't know how it fits into an overall strategy. Next month, for this webinar, I'm presenting the book by Reid Hoffman called Super Agency, one of 16 books I have presented on artificial intelligence. I don't do books on how to use ChatGPT, although one book, Co-Intelligence, has 5 key guidelines. But I do books that are kind of thought pieces about what's coming down the pike with AI. And Brené Brown says you've got to have a strategic mindset to use AI. So I really like that. And then she said in the interview, a good leader to me right now is a leader who understands urgency, but is working from productive urgency. Not like my grandma would say, chicken with your head cut off urgency. We're seeing a lot of that, but productive, strategic urgency. Action over impact is so dangerous. She says any action must be tied to desired impact. I like that thinking. And so right now we're seeing a ton of action over impact as companies try to incorporate and integrate this technology. They're not understanding how to bring people along. And I think one more quote, no, I've got a couple of more. All right. Leading by fear as a catalyst can result in very quick performance metrics. They're not sustainable for a really simple reason. Fear has a very short shelf life. And in order to maintain fear as a leadership tool, you have to demonstrate a capacity for cruelty at very regular intervals. So you can't keep me afraid forever. If periodically you can demonstrate cruelty and a capacity for it, that will rekindle my fear. I think people are becoming less and less tolerant of living that way. I could give you a list of leaders who function in that way. They create fear. They make everybody afraid. They are cruel in the way they criticize and chastise people in front of others. And that does produce short-term bursts of success. But long-term, morale is gutted. There is no team spirit. Esprit de corps is out the window. And Brené Brown says that is not sustainable. So to put it mildly, I am in agreement with her insight about that. And then one last quote from the interview from the New York Times journalist. You're asking me about communication. As a fellow communicator, the journalist said, I think about this a lot because ultimately communication is about building trust, bringing people along. Why do you think we suck at it? And Brené Brown said, good communication is a skill that's based in clarity, discipline, and accountability. I like that. Good communication is vulnerable. It's hard. You have to have a tolerance for discomfort if you want to communicate well and honestly. A brave life is basically 15 hard conversations a day. Then we talk about clarity, clarity of what we want to say, economy of words, using the right words to describe what we want to do, what we mean, and what we need. Discipline, checking an email 3 times, picking up a phone instead of sending a text because tone is lost on text and it doesn't work. And so you've got to be intentional and you've got to go out of the way to communicate really effectively. So I encourage you to read the Brené Brown interview that I put the link in the chat for. Brené Brown doesn't want to be your self-help guru anymore. Now, if any of you are new on these webinars where I present book briefings, you've got a handout. I think it's really important that you have the handout in front of you, printed out if possible with your pen in hand, because I'm going to have you mark a number of things. I found this book terrific. And I believe that we are in an era of such uncertainty. I know you've all heard the acronym VUCA, VUCA. I first read that from Bob Johansen in a book decades ago. It came from the Army General's Training Ground. It's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Well, in a VUCA world, we have lost our strong ground. I read in a book years ago, forgive me, I don't remember which book, that there's a difference between playing volleyball on a gym floor where your footing is secure and playing volleyball on the beach where your footing gives way and you can't have the same solid stance and solid ground. And this book says you need solid ground. Look at the subtitle right here, The Lessons of Daring Leadership, the tenacity of paradox, and the wisdom of the human spirit. And she says on the book cover image, a dare to lead book. So this is her elaboration of what she did and presented first in Dare to Lead. On the front, at the bottom of the page, what is the point of this book? Strong ground is your true strength in leadership and life that comes from standing on a solid foundation of connection, humility, and vulnerability. Connection, humility, and vulnerability. Now, she uses those three words. I would say that it starts with humility. I don't know everything. I have more to learn. I'm not smarter than you are. I may be more trained or more informed in this area, but you are in that area. We are humble fellow learners together. Humility. And then, in order to express that humility, then I am vulnerable. I acknowledge my flaws and deficiencies and weaknesses. And then we have to connect with each other as fellow learner, fellow struggler people. When I read this book, I thought of something from decades ago, and I don't expect any of you to know anything about this. But in the 1970s, and maybe even back to the 60s, there were some Christian authors named Keith Miller and Robert Raines. And they both wrote The Taste of New Wine, 1965, A Second Touch, 1970. These are books from that era. Keith Miller wrote about being frightened, doubtful, insecure, lonely, vulnerable. That's what he was describing. And in Daring Greatly, which I did not present but read, Brené Brown said this: vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. Being vulnerable is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. And authenticity, she wrote in another book, is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. And so I guess if you kind of want to lean back and think about it, Strong Ground says Don't put up a facade of strength. Oh, I know everything. I'm stronger than you are. I've got everything together. Instead, be humble and vulnerable and learn as you keep learning and going, and people will follow your leadership. I think that's what she's saying, and it's profound. If you look to page 2, we now have a number of pages of the best of my highlighted passages from the book. When you see one that's in a larger font or bold, that's my emphasis. And I strongly encourage you to read this entire handout all the way through one time, if at all possible, later this afternoon, but within the next few days, to let this book sink a little deeper into your mind and your soul. All right, I'm going to read a number of these, and we're going to go quickly. Number 1, I recognize that choosing courage, discipline, and kindness can feel impossible and increasingly vulnerable in a time when even empathy has been vilified. There are people who say we should not have empathy anymore. It makes us weak. Well, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. Look at number 2. We will not build on dysfunction. I like that. We will not build on dysfunction. Number 7, there is no app for transformation. There are some things for which there is not an app for. And let me add to that, and there is no speed learning of leadership with humility and vulnerability. If you have not read it in the last week, Warren Buffett has given his last message as the head of his organization that he built so effectively. And his last message, just Google it, look for Warren Buffett's final message. I forget what he called it, but it's remarkable, and it is filled with humility, acknowledgement of deficiency, and the need to always keep learning. So that was really profound for me to read that. All right, number 10, eat well, move well, sleep well, connect well, and practice thankfulness. Number 11, organizationally, we need the same things I wrote on an intake form I handed to Tony. I'm going to tell you in a few minutes about her body collapse, her physical body collapse, which kind of gave her the title of this book. And so here's what she wrote: strength, endurance, agility, mobility, and balance. We want faster reaction times, better responsiveness, and the ability to quickly change direction. Well, circle that. That's just a pretty good description of the kinds of adjustments that leaders need to make. Number 13, right now, the thought of slowing down to do anything can be paralyzing. I'd put a star beside that, because the reality is that we feel like every morning we wake up, I have fallen farther behind. Which AI platform do I need to use? How do I need to use it more effectively? Oh my goodness, where are we missing the boat? We are feeling perpetually further behind. We can't possibly slow down to grasp everything, and we're feeling paralyzed in many ways. Number 15, we need a sense of discerning urgency. This is like what she said in the interview that I read. Discerning urgency, driven by smart prioritization, trust building skills, strategic risk taking, paradoxical thinking, pattern recognition, meaning making, situational and anticipatory awareness in the market served, agility, tenacity, humility, and confidence to unlearn and relearn systems and symphonic thinking that deliver operational excellence, and the courage to lead people in a way that honors and protects the wisdom of the human spirit. Well, put a box around number 15 and just basically say, here's my agenda for my leadership development. I mean, think of all of those things that were said. Symphonic thinking, the idea that everything connects, every person from every department and every one of the people we serve, they all connect into a bigger whole. I was going to mention this later, I'll do it now. One of the most profound thinkers is a man named Thomas Friedman. He's won 3 Pulitzer Prizes. He has written the following books: From Beirut to Jerusalem, and The World is Flat, and Hot, Flat, and Crowded, and a couple of others that I don't remember. I've read those 3. And Friedman is a smart man. And he had a column a couple of days ago in the New York Times, the longest essay I think I've ever seen from Thomas Friedman. And he says that we have now reached the point where we need a new name to define and describe the era that we are in. And he came up with this name, Polycene, the many era. Everything is connected. I don't know if that word will catch on, but that essay is profound. You can find it in the New York Times 3 or 4 days ago. And so this paragraph kind of has that feel of the many things we have to be on top of and tackle. It is truly overwhelming. Turn to page 3. Number 17, in today's world, we need more awe, wonder, and joy. These are the fuel for restoration and meaning. And meaning is critical. Simon Sinek's books start with why. Moral Ambition by Rutger Bregman. I think I've got the title, the author right. I recently presented that. And then, of course, the classic, the one book that when people ask me what's the most important book you've ever read, here it is, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He survived the death camps of World War II. Well, the fuel for restoration and meaning is awe and wonder and joy. Number 19, we need to be spiritual, not religious, but spiritual. I define spirituality as recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us, and that our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love, compassion, and mystery. God, nature, humanity, fishing, there are as many sources of that power as there are people. We are physical beings, we are intellectual beings, and we are spiritual beings, spirit to spirit. We know this, and there are multiple ways to talk about it, but she says, if you have a leader who is devoid of spirituality, the whole team is going to suffer and be hungry. I think that's right. Number 21, we grow spiritually much more by doing things wrong than by doing everything right. Whew. That's what she wrote. And by the way, if you'll circle number 21 and read Warren Buffett's farewell message, they will go together because he talks about what he learned from his failures and flaws and deficiencies. And I believe that is profound insight. Number 23, when Jim Collins interviewed Stockdale, he asked him a tough question. Stockdale was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, later ran for vice president, if I remember correctly, with Ross Perot. He asked him a tough question. Who didn't make it out? And Stockdale replied, oh, that's easy. the optimists. Stockdale told Collins, this is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. And so that's the Stockdale paradox. Realism connected to hope, but not shallow optimism. So it's fascinating. All right, number 27. We have confirmation bias, seeing what we expect to see. We have desirability bias, seeing what we want to see. These biases don't just prevent us from applying our intelligence, they can actually contort our intelligence into a weapon against the truth. Number 28, my question, what, if anything, about the way people are leading today needs to change in order for leaders to be successful in a complex, rapidly changing environment where we're faced with seemingly intractable challenges and an insatiable demand for innovation? The answer across participants, we need braver leaders and more courageous cultures. Turn to page 4. Top of the page, number 29, is her definition of leadership. A leader is anyone, regardless of title and position, who holds themselves accountable for finding potential in people and ideas and who has the courage to develop that potential. I think one of the questions we ought to ask all the time is, what is the task of leadership? And I think it includes these elements. It's all in this definition. The leader sees the future better than others. Steve Jobs was a wizard at this. The leader, he or she, sees the future better than others. The leader knows they can't get to that future without the team. The leader creates the environment where the team can do the work to get to that future. I think that's kind of what leadership is. And I want you to know that I have presented books on leadership for 28 years. And consistently, I read that we have more books on leadership, more seminars on leadership, more workshop on leaderships, and we don't have a lot of very good leaders. Somehow, we haven't learned the lessons that we could learn. All right? Number 37. When you get into fear because you don't trust yourself, your teammates, your process, our plan, or your training, you play small. When you get too arrogant and you think this is easy, which it is not, you get careless. It is never easy. Playing small and being careless both lead to serious problems. All right? I'm going to have to begin to skip, so read the rest of the bold ones, especially. Turn to page 5. Number 43, in short, we progressed from a society of farmers to a society of factory workers to a society of knowledge workers, and now we're progressing yet again to a society of pattern recognizers and meaning makers. This is where you want the Friedman essay. I think this is a profound statement. Pattern recognition, making meaning. Those are two critical big picture issues at the moment. Number 44, in business today, the journey from innovation to commodity is so swift that successful individuals and organizations must be relentless. Study the kinds of computer chips that we had 20 years ago and study the way the NVIDIA multi-level, multifaceted almost amoeba-like chips do not this and then this and then this, but do all of this and all of this and all of this and all of this all simultaneously. It's really profound, the difference in what those chips can do. And that's kind of the idea. The old chips are commodities. They are now, I was going to say a dime a dozen, but it's probably, a penny for 1,000. It's just amazing. Although we're now printing the last penny right now in Philadelphia. That's a side issue. All right, number 46. Holding yourself accountable is looking at your intentions and your impact. Is asking the question, could I be doing better and how? And then answering that question truthfully. All right, turn to page 6. These are what I call the thesis quotes. This is the guts of the book. I'll read a few of them. The first one: so many of us wake up in the morning feeling overwhelmed by a world where bluster, hubris, and even cruelty are normalized and sold as a form of leadership. Boy, is she right about that. And that is bad and painful. The second quote: I see leaders who understand that performance and impact increase when people feel seen and heard and respected. And the bottom two: to be anchored, we must identify what we want, who we want to become, and what truly matters to us. We do that by stating our core values, getting clarity on who we truly want to be, and peeling that apart from who the world wants us to be, and understanding our own internal emotional landscape. And I defined grounded confidence as a brand of confidence that is built not on arrogance or posturing, but rather on the solid ground of self-awareness. Circle that phrase: the solid ground of self-awareness, courage, and practice. Grounding confidence is accepting and embracing learning and unlearning, practicing and failing, and at its core, it's driven by discipline and the joy of mastery. If you've never read the book Think Again by Adam Grant, Learning and Unlearning, that's a book to help you think through that challenge. Turn to page 7. All right. At the top of the page, now these are kind of the points of the book. First, I've already mentioned Keith Miller and Robert Raines and Brené Brown and the word vulnerability. Now, a warning about Brené Brown: she can be direct and earthy and a touch profane. And so if you don't want to read cuss words, then skip Brené Brown. So she'll use the word, it's right here in a quote in italics, it's from the book. What makes us human will ensure our relevance. I call bullshit on this for one simple reason: I don't think in this moment that we're very good at what makes us human. So that's an example of Brené Brown getting to the point. So I say that with a smile. What is this book? We're going to work through this quickly. We've got about 5 more minutes before I wrap this up. Call it a how to work with people, how to lead people, how to be led by people, soft skills manual. Developing core stability and functional strength in organizations means investing in people, because for an organization, people and our connection to each other are the strong ground. Now, Brené Brown really likes sports, so she uses a lot of sports analogies. And here is the overarching metaphor of this book. And it's really quite a profound metaphor. She was playing pickleball, and her body just collapsed. Moving forward, I solemnly swear to use the word writhe only in its most literal sense. Her body was writhing in pain. I whispered to myself, strong ground, Brené, strong ground. And it took a bunch of months working with a very good trainer to train her body to be strong so that it would not collapse like that. And she said, I had played pickleball without building my body to be strong. So it's very fascinating. Here's grounded confidence, kind of the outline of the key thoughts of the book. Our core, self awareness, metacognition, emotional awareness plus regulation, mindfulness, systems thinking. Our strength, vulnerability, courage, trust, compassion plus empathy, connection, humility, deep curiosity, mastery, discipline, power, accountability, adaptability, lock in and lock through power. Our awareness, situational awareness. Brief aside, there is a massively important, lengthy 162-page PDF. You can find it. I forget the name of the man who wrote it, on situational awareness. And it's all about AI. And he says, we have not figured out where we are, but we've got to learn. That's an aside issue. Temporal awareness, visualization, and mental rehearsal, multicultural awareness. Our thinking, anticipatory thinking, strategic thinking, critical thinking, paradoxical thinking, intuitive thinking plus pattern recognition, creative and design thinking, and symphonic thinking. And our communication, Lego and Duplo. Lego was for the small children. Duplo made it easy. I'm sorry, for the regular children. Duplo for the small children, but it all went together. Emotionally resonant language. I don't have time to tell you about Chekhov's gun. Aesthetic force, communicate all of the changes, invisible armies and bullshit disclaimers, metaphors, analogies, and stories. And at the bottom, many people are in trouble. I'd say we feel disconnected, distrustful, emotionally dysregulated, overwhelmed by big feelings that are hard to name and contain and can drive behaviors and thinking that are not always aligned with who we want to be. All right, turn to page 8. All I've got time for is the bullet points. Vulnerability, shame, guilt, humiliation, embarrassment. Change is hard. It is never easy. Circle that. It is absolutely correct. Change is hard. It is never easy. Embrace vulnerability. Live and work above the line of fear. Don't live and work in the area of fear. And then some practical steps. Small things are not so small. First, write on paper much more often. I am utterly convinced that if you will print out these handouts, take notes as I talk, reread them once on your own, you will remember more of the key points and figure out some things to do than if I showed a few PowerPoint slides. I'm a fan of physical handout that you interact with. Look at what she says. It's a quote from the book. I have to say that there might be something to the research that posits that writing on paper offers cognitive advantages over digital writing in terms of memory retention, conceptual understanding, and neural processing. The cycle, you get stronger by surviving each series of little breakdowns. That happens in sports, that happens in life. Aim for self-awareness, a deep understanding of your own emotions and strengths and weaknesses and needs and drives. Visualize thoroughly and put together the pieces in symphonic thinking. Turn to page 9, and on the right side of the page, I have 6 lessons and takeaways. Learn from everywhere. Number 2, develop your curiosity. Number 3, do not get cocky and do not get complacent. Keep learning and developing. Number 4, intentionally learn from sports and the arts and from business and from government and from history and from everywhere else that you may not be paying enough attention to. Number 5, realize that what you say and how you act and what you do all have ripple effects that impact all around you. And number 6, ask some key questions like, what do I need to learn? What do I need to unlearn? What do I need to explore? Who do I need to have an honest conversation with? And maybe the best thought of all, what honest conversation do I need to have with myself? Well, that's the book, Strong Ground, The Lessons of Daring Leadership, the Tenacity of Paradox, and the Wisdom of the Human Spirit. Howson, back to you.
Awesome. That was incredible. Randy, thank you so much for that summary. Yeah, folks have any questions in the chat, please feel free to throw them in the chat. In the meantime, I love the idea of leaning into paradox. And I think one that I'm still making meaning of is this in the beginning when they talked about AI and how it takes courage to embrace it and that fear is not sustainable. And how that links with our investment in what Brené Brown is talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like time for self-awareness, the strength and quality of our relationships, right? What would it be like if we made the same investments in AI in terms of and measurement into quality of relationships and time spent, right? I think there's something interesting about this age of information and industrialization being very physical, and now this age of pattern recognition and meaning making being kind of intangible, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
show me the money. Like a lot of the things that seem to be valuable can't be measured, right? So how do we reconcile with that?
So here's a couple of thoughts that I've had from what you just said, Hassan. Number one, for the first time ever, the next AI step forward arrives so quickly that we have not had a chance to learn the last step forward. In other words, there's no rest in between the next steps forward. And so consequently, we are not going to keep up like we used to. And so the only thing we can invest in that might give us a little relaxed time and pay richer dividends is the interaction with human beings on the team. Getting along with people, knowing each other, knowing what we can do together, making sure that we don't are cruel or ridiculing or mean spirited, but understanding that's what we're going to have to build. And we can't keep up with AI the way we could with earlier Excel spreadsheets and Microsoft Word documents and design. It's a different era. So those are some thoughts that I've got, Howson, from some of what you said. So is there anyone
I love
else
that.
with a question or thought?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like part of unlearning, kind of from that transition period is spending time on relationship rather
Yeah.
than more work. So
Yeah.
um All right, well, folks have any other questions? We're going to wrap up now. Thank you for your time. Feel free to reach out to Randy or any of us here at SGR and AFI if you have questions. Next month's book briefing will be on Super Agency by Reid Hoffman. Anything you want to say about that, Randy, before we hop off?
The big deal in AI is building agents. And somehow the idea is that AI is going to do things on its own once you set it up. And Reid Hoffman is an optimist. I shouldn't use that word. He's a boomer. The word is not baby boomer, but instead of a doomer, AI is going to kill us. A boomer, AI is going to be great. Reid Hoffman, who started LinkedIn, is a boomer, and he believes that AI will bring us super agency. It's a hopeful book about what AI can do, and it might be a good book to end the year on for these book briefings and these webinars. So that's what I say. I hope you can join us. It's the second Wednesday of December. So
Fantastic. I think we could all use a little bit of hope coming in the next year. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Lisa, for all of the work and the time you put into these Wednesday webinars. Really appreciate you. Have a great
thanks,
Thanksgiving.
everybody.